no param constructor. A constructor that is created by programmer with parameters is called parameterized constructor. Okay, nice. So when to create no param constructor, when to create parameterized constructor? Tell me, when should we create no param constructor and when should create parameterized constructor? I want to initialize the object at the time of object creation. Then we must create constructor with a parameters. I want to create object without doing any initialization. Then you should have no param constructor or default constructor. No param or default constructor we can have. So repeating once again, how many constructors are there? 3 constructors. Number 1, no default, no param constructor. I don't have any initialization logic. Then you don't define any constructor. Compiler will add one constructor without parameters. Next, I want to initialize the object with my own values. With my own values. I want to initialize my object with my own values. No param constructor. I want to initialize my object by taking values from method or constructor caller or object creation programmer. Parameterized constructor. Clear? So this is what we have understood up to last class. Now, when I create object by using no param constructor or by using parameterized constructor, how many steps are there? What are the rules in calling constructor? We must call constructor by following 2 rules. Rule number 1, we must call constructor by passing argument based on the parameters. If constructor is no param constructor, we should not pass arguments. If constructor is a parameterized constructor, we have to pass arguments. So you should not blindly write example E1 equal to new example as you like. First you must verify. Is that a constructor available in the class? First you have to look into the class and find the constructor, call that constructor accordingly. Then when you create an object, there are 4 steps are there. Step number 1, variable declaration. Step number 2, class instantiation, object initialization, and returning object. Okay. So what is the meaning of variable declaration? Allocating memory to referenced variable. What is the meaning of class instantiation? Creating new instance with all non-static variables available in the class. With all non-static variables memory available in the class, and initialize that object with the default values based on the data type. Next, what is the meaning of class initialization? Sorry, what is the meaning of object initialization? Storing given values inside object non-static variables is called object initialization. Then, what is the meaning of returning object? Returning object means returning object memory or returning reference of the object and storing the reference variable pointing is called what? Object returning object. Okay. Now the next question. Who will create object of a class? Who will eat food? Who will eat food? Person. Who will digest food? Person. Who will sleep on the road? Person. Who will roll on the road? Person. Who will walk on the road? Person. Person. But which part is working? That you have to tell. Who creates object of a class and JVM and JVM is a big software. Pani part suddenly you will miss common sense. I don't know. When you improve your common sense. Who creates object of a class? We are in which discussion? You are talking what nonsense? We are how to create object of a class by using new keyword and available constructor. Then who creates object and JVM say, hey, what should I do now? Tell me, who creates object of a class? New keyword. Who initialize the object? Constructor. Whichever the constructor you call. No need to say available constructor, constructor, available constructor, and which constructor you have to call that constructor, right? I repeat again, who creates object of a class? Who initializes object? If interior of specifically asking, who initializes object with default value? Who initializes object with default values? Who initializes object with given values? Who returns object reference? Right. Continuation to last class. Answer below questions. Answer below questions. Question number 1. Who creates object of a class? Question number 1. Who will create object of a class? Question number 1. Who creates object of a class? Write down like this. New keyword constructor. Side by side like this. Answer. New keyword. You tick mark to new keyword. Next question. Who will initialize object with the default values? Other answer. New keyword. Next. Who will initialize object with given values? Answer, constructor. Next, who will return object reference? Answer, new keyword. Okay, now there is a confusion in the market. We are saying that new keyword return object reference, but people are saying constructor return object reference. So we have to prove that new keyword returns object reference, but not constructor. If constructor want return object, there should be a return type. Na? Everyone say that implicit return type is current class. Implicit return type is current class. What is the return type of the constructor? So we are saying that void, but people are saying that implicit return type is current class. We need to prove it is not current class. Right now, these two questions. I'll show you the points. Completed up? Now look at here. Simple, I have to answer like this. Prove that new keyword returns object reference but not constructor. If a constructor can create object and return the new keyword, return the object, why new keyword required? Question number 1. If constructor can create object and return, why should new keyword is required? Okay, new keyword is not required. If constructor can create object, new keyword is not required because we are using new keyword in an object creation process. New keyword is responsible for creating object. Constructor is responsible for initializing object. Point number 1, what the role of constructor, what the role of new keyword? Second, because new keyword creates object and giving to constructor, constructor not returning, taking the object, initializing, leaving. If you want to say constructor returns the object, constructor must have return type. If return type is there, I can place return statement. If I write return value semicolon, it should not throw error. Now, to prove constructor return type is void, not current class type. To prove constructor cannot return value and its return type is void, inside constructor body, place return semicolon. If I place return semicolon, if method return type is not void, return semicolon will throw error or not? Now return semicolon place will not get compile time error. Place return 5 semicolon, we will get compile time. Let me show you that point. Observe this class. This is a method or constructor. కొంచెం ఆలోచించండి సార్. Return type is example, method name is M1. Okay. Now if I write return semicolon, will compiler throw any error? This is a method. Inside method I place return semicolon. Is this program compiled or not compiled? Compiled or not compiled? Compiled. Not compiled. Why compiled? Why not compiled? Try cheyandi. This is a new point. No, it's a known point only. It is a known point only. What is the meaning of return semicolon? What the use of return semicolon? Return semicolon is used for returning value or no value? No value. If you are not returning any value, there should not be return type, na? Here, this method has the return type example. If a method return type is example, I must return value. So because I am not returning value, is it allowed or not allowed? Not allowed. Compiler throw error, incompatible types, missing return value. So if method return type is other than void, I cannot place return semicolon. Okay. If return type is void, allowed or not allowed? Allowed. No compile time error. If I write example, then return semicolon throw error. Return 5 semicolon. Error or no error? This value is what type? What is the return type? How can you return 5 via example? 5 is primitive type. This is reference type. How primitive can be assigned to reference? Not possible. Compiler throw error. Did I explain void, non-void methods in your batch? No or yes? Not explain? Did I explain method types or method chapter? At least you remember that? Okay. Next, return null. Allowed? Return null. I am not in a mode of scolding you, not in a mode of fighting with you. You tell your answer right. If you say, I will accept. If wrong, I'll correct and I'll go. Okay? Because my mind is completely evaporated. Scolding, converting, it's become impossible. Yesterday I told you, I write one message yesterday in the Google Classroom. From first chapter to here, do revision what, why, how, so that you can understand next classes. You didn't study, so I cannot force you further. If I force you further, you will get irritated and stop coming to the class. So I'm not ready to force you. Just you tell me, is it allowed or not allowed? Not allowed. Why not allowed? If you say not allowed, question yourself, why not allowed? If you say allowed, question yourself, why it is allowed? What am I returning? What is null? Null is a default value of a referenced data type. Null is of what type? Any referenced data type. What the method return type? Example. Via example, can I return null or not? Yes, we can return. No compile time error. Okay, next. I am writing here return this. Is it allowed? What is this? Reference to current object of which class? Current class. Now, can I return example class object via example type? Can I return example class object via example type? No, no. I want return 5. What the return type should be? Void. Okay. We'll discuss in the coming classes. Okay. I don't want much trouble you. Write down these notes. Still, you are not in a position to understand. To prove constructor return type is void, okay. The constructor implicit return type is void. First point is what? For the first question, to prove constructor doesn't create object. To prove constructor doesn't create object, consider below point. If constructor can create object, new keyword is not required because we are using new keyword in an object creation process. New keyword is responsible for creating object and constructor is responsible for initializing object. So these points you by heart and try to tell to interviewer if they ask. These are very important points you have to remember. Completed? Done? Completed? Tell me what are the points we have learned up to now? Point number 1. Everyone written? Still writing up. Online students, everyone completed? Okay. So look at here. What are the points we have completed up to now? Point 1. We learn what is constructor. What is constructor? A constructor is a kind of method whose name is same as class name. Example, open bracket, closed bracket. Whose name is same as class name, doesn't have return type. Now tell me, is constructor really doesn't have return type? No. Implicitly it has return type. Return type is void. That means inside a constructor can I write return semicolon? Yes. Can I write return value semicolon? No, because return type is void. Second point. Okay, what the use of constructor? Why constructor? Constructor is used for initializing non-static variables of the current class or meant for initializing current object. To initialize current object, the current object reference will be passed as an argument and stored inside this keyword. And then inside this constructor, we will access the members by using this dot x equal to 10 and this dot y equal to 20. If I don't write this dot, there is no compile time error. Compiler will add this dot because there are no local variables with the same name in x and y. Okay, next point. If you wanted to initialize the object by taking the values from other programmer, then you have to define a constructor with a parameter. Here you should compulsory write this dot x equal to x and you should write this dot y equal to y. Compulsory how to write with this dot explicitly. Otherwise, compiler will not write this dot. It will not throw error. The values are reading from parameter and storing in parameter. Field will not be initialized. Okay. Then third point, what is the syntax for creating constructor? How can we create constructor? How can we create constructor? You have to follow 4 rules. Rule number 1, its class name must be same as class name must be same. Okay, its name must be same as class name. Return type must not have return type, must not have execution level modifier. Next, as part of the body, constructor body, as part of the logic, I must not place return value semicolon, because if you write value semicolon, it should have a return type matching to this value. Na? Constructor cannot have return type. So must not have return value semicolon. These are the rules we have to follow. Then what is the syntax for creating constructor? Accessibility modifier, class name, accessibility modifier, class name, parameter list, throws, exception list, dash logic. Okay, next. Once you create constructor, is the constructor automatically executed by JVM? No, we must call it. What is the rule in calling constructor? Calling rule. Constructor is meant for what? Initializing object. To initialize object, first of all, object must be created. How can I create object? By using new keyword. So we must call constructor by using new keyword, and then I must pass arguments matching to the available constructor. If a constructor is, if the class contain no param constructor, you should not pass argument. If a constructor has a parameterized constructor, you must pass argument. So totally, what are the rules? We must, okay, for example, I should write new example parenthesis. You cannot write directly example parenthesis. Like method call, you cannot place constructor call. Okay, like method, you cannot place constructor call. Example parenthesis semicolon, if write, compiler will throw error because compiler considers a method call. With this name example, there is no method, so compiler will throw error. Okay, so totally how many rules we have to follow while working with the constructor? Rule number 1, class name must be same as, its name must be same as class name. Rule number 2, it should not have return type, including void. Rule number 3, it should not have execution level modifier. Rule number 4, it should not contain return value semicolon. Rule number 5, it must be called by using new keyword. Rule number 6, you must pass arguments based on the parameters available in the constructor. If you take a different class name, what is the result? It leads to compile time error. If you choose a different name, what is the result we will get? If you choose different name, compiler throw error. We will get compile time error. We will get compile time error. If you take a return type to the constructor, no compile time error, no runtime error. Again repeating, if you define constructor with return type void, there is no compile time error. It is considered as method. It is considered as method. So it is considered as method. Tell me, a method name can be same as class name or not? Yes. Then if it contain return type void, then there is no compile time error. Repeat once again. Constructor should not have return type. If I provide return type, any compile time error, no compile time error, no runtime error. it is considered as method. It is considered as method. Online students understanding? It is considered as method. Okay. Now tell me, if it is a method, how can we call? By using object reference. By using object reference. Now, example E1 equal to new example. Tell me, here, is it considered as a constructor or method? Here, example E1, new example. Here, it is considered as method or constructor. It is considered as a constructor. Why? Because you are calling by using new keyword. Now, I am writing E1 dot example. If I write E1 dot example, now the no compile time error, it is considered as method. Now the question, how compiler can differentiate if I create a method with the same name as a constructor name and method name both are same, means class name. How compiler can decide which is a constructor, which is a method, depending on return type. Okay, if a return type is there, now it is considered as a method. If a return type is not there, considered as constructor. While calling, how compiler can differentiate constructor and method call? You call with a new keyword is considered as a constructor. You call with the object reference or directly is considered as a method. Is it clear? Now the question try to answer. If you define a method, means if we create a constructor with void, means it is considered as a method. Then is this class contain any constructor or no constructor? There is a constructor in this class, that is default constructor. Who will place this default constructor? Compiler software. Suppose if I myself write example of int x comma int y open bracket closed bracket, I myself written a parameterized constructor. Then in this class, do you have default constructor? No. Compiler will not add default constructor because you have placed parameterized constructor. Then here example E1 new example, it leads to compile time error because default constructor not available in the class and no param constructor not available in the class. E1 dot example, if you want to compile this line, first of all, you have to create an object here properly. How to create object? By passing argument. Example E1 equal to new example of by passing 5 comma 6. Then now here object is created by using which constructor? Parameterized constructor. Then here E1 executed which one? No param method. Everyone understand? So what are the rules we have to follow while creating method? You should have constructor with the same name as a class name. Rule number 2, it should not have return type. If you have return type, any compile time error? No, it is considered as method. Rule number 3, constructor should not contain execution level modifier. Means you should not take static example open bracket closed bracket. It leads to compile time error. Execution level modifier should not be right. If you write, it leads to compile time error. Return value semicolon should not write. It leads to compile time error. You should call by using new keyword. If you call directly, it leads to compile time error. You should pass arguments if the constructor is parameter. You should not pass arguments if the constructor is no param. If you are violating the rule, it leads to compile time error. The only confusion point is what? Return type. If a constructor has a return type, there is no compile time error. It is considered as a method. Clear my point? Right. Then suppose I am writing a program like this. Tell me what happened here. I am writing a class example, open bracket. I am writing ex, open bracket, closed bracket, void ex, open bracket, closed bracket. So tell me, here do you have any constructor? In this program, do you have constructor? In this program, do you have method? Yes. Now, here I am writing example E1 equal to new example semicolon. Tell me here what is executed? New keyword is calling what? Constructor. Constructor, how compiler can identify? How can you differentiate constructor versus method? By using return type. There is a return type here? No. Then what is sorry? You call it by using what? New keyword. New keyword means constructor. How we can identify constructor? No return type. Now I am writing E1 dot example semicolon. You have called this one by using object reference. Object reference means now it is searching for the method. How it will find a method? By using return type. Okay, na? Right. Then these are the points related to constructor and 7th point, sample program. Sample program we have understood already. Sample program with default constructor, Okay, sample program by creating constructor. Then next point we have understood types of constructors. Next we went to the next point is what? Types of constructors. How many constructors we have in the project? Okay, in a class we can define three types of constructors. Number one, default constructor, no param constructor, param constructor. Default constructor is compiler generated constructor. Param, no param constructors are programmer defined constructor, not generated. Programmer defined constructor. We have three types of constructors. Default constructor, no param constructor, and parameterized constructor. Okay, then when to use which constructor? What is a default constructor? A constructor that is defined by compiler is called default constructor. A constructor that is defined by programmer without parameters is called no param constructor. A constructor defined by programmer with parameters is called what? Parameterized constructor. Okay, nice. Then 10th point. When should we define no default constructor? I don't have any initialization logic. Then we have to choose what? Default constructor. Means you don't define any constructor, compiler software automatically add that constructor. Next, I have initialization logic with hard-coded values. Or by reading values from the keyboard, or reading values from the file. Then we have to take no param constructor. Next, I want to initialize object with programmer given values. Okay, programmer given values. Then I have to take what? Parameterized constructor. Okay, so how many types of constructors? There are definitions and use. Okay, then now tell me either, okay, when compiler will generate default constructor. Will compiler generate default constructor always? No. When there is no param constructor or parameterized constructor, then only compiler will write default constructor. Okay, then now tell me what are the combination of constructors? Point number one, here I am going to write default constructor. First combination number one, only default constructor I am creating, allowed. Second, only no param constructor I am creating. Next, only parameterized constructor, allowed. Now, I am placing fourth option, default constructor plus no param constructor. Not possible. Fifth, default constructor per parameter constructor, not allowed. Sixth, I am going to prepare no param constructor plus param constructor, allowed. Seventh, default constructor plus no param constructor plus param constructor, not allowed. Why? If a default constructor is there, means what? We don't have other constructors. If other constructors are there, compiler will not place default constructor. Okay, so these are the cases we have to understand. Now tell me, with this entire knowledge, we have come to know either you use no param constructor, param constructor, or default constructor. What are the steps? Involved in an object creation? There are 4 steps are there. Step number 1, reference variable declaration, class instantiation, object initialization, and then returning object reference. What the meaning of reference variable declaration? E1 variable memory created. What the meaning of class instantiation? Create the new instance with non-static variables memory with the default values based on data type. What the meaning of object initialization? Replace the values with a given values. What the meaning of returning object? Return the reference of the object stored in E1 variable and pointing. Then 14th point we discuss what is the role of constructor and what the role of new keyword. New keyword is responsible for performing 3 operations. Operation number 1, create object. Second, initialize object with the default values. Third, calling constructor. Fourth operation is returning object reference. So constructor totally perform 4 operations. What are the 4 operations? Example, E1 example E1 equal to new example. Example E1 equal to new example. New keyword, first step, create object. Reference is 1010. Reference is 1010 with X and Y variables. Second step, initialize object. First step, create object. Second step, initialize object. 0, 0 with the default values. And third, calling constructor by passing current object reference. Then constructor with its internal logic 0, 0 replace with value 10 and 20. Then fourth step, return the object reference. So if you remember this diagram, there are totally 4 steps are there. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Okay, number 1, number 2, and number 3, number 4. Okay, right? Or else if you consider create object with default values, you can write it as the first step, create object with default values. Second step, calling constructor. Third step, returning object. 1, and this is 2, and this is 3. Okay, so very simple. Constructor has 3 arrow marks. Now, what is the role of what the role of constructor? New keyword understand. Now, what the role of constructor? Is a constructor meant for creating object or initializing object? It performs only one operation, initialize object. But this initializing object has internally constructor perform 3 operations. As part of initialization, constructor perform 3 operations. Tell me, I have written just a new keyword. Can new keyword create object of a class? Just I have written new keyword. Just I have written new keyword. Just I have written new keyword. Can new keyword can create object just like that? No. What we required? New keyword should know to which class object should be created. New keyword should know to which class object should be created. So after new keyword, I have to write a class name. Tell me, is it class name or constructor name? Constructor name. So new keyword, constructor is giving information about the constructor. New constructor is giving information about the class to whom it has to create object. So operation number 1, constructor gives class information to the new keyword for creating object. Step number 1. Step number 2. Tell me, new keyword ready to create object. Now, if you carefully observe, in the real life, you have parent and we have what? Child. Parent and child is there. Someone come to the child asking, "Arey, what is your asti? What are your properties? Ni aste indi cheppu. What are your properties?" Then the child will tell the properties of his own properties and also the properties inherited from the parent. Tell me, in the property document, he clearly written, this is a Swarajitam. Ide parent, tanti nunchi vachina asti, idi nee own asti. This is my own and this is the parent. So now inside the child object, inside the child document, there will be clearly will be there. These are the child own properties. These are the properties inherited from parent. These are the properties inherited from grandparent. So that means whenever you create one class object, for example, example E1 equal to new example. Then like in the real life, new keyword will create example class object with its own members plus its parent class members plus its grandparent class members up to who is the superclass of all classes? Java.lang.object class. In Java, every class is a subclass of java.lang.object class. So first this is, suppose this class is what? Example. Suppose example is the subclass of sample. And next superclass is what? Object. All these 3 classes members memory is created. So now I'm repeating once again, try to understand now. Whenever you create object of a class, I am writing a class called example, open bracket, closed bracket. I am creating a class called sample, which is extends from example. Okay, now I am creating sample object S1 equal to new sample of. Tell me now, new keyword is going to the sample class to create object. Then it found a sample is a subclass of whom now? Example. Then it has to allocate members memory of example also now. Then new keyword go to example class. Then new keyword found example is the subclass of object class. When there is no class here, super class, compiler software by default attach object as a super class. That means what is the inheritance hierarchy? Super class is what? Object. It is my class or predefined class? Predefined class. Object is derived by whom? Example. Example is derived from whom? Sample. That means now the new keyword first come to where? Sample class. Found extends from example, found extends from object. Then it has to create sample class object with only sample class members memory. No, sample class members memory plus example class members memory plus object class. All these three members memory is called what? Sample class object. So this is sample and this is example and this is object. Okay, what the job of new keyword? Allocate memory. Suppose in sample class assume we have a y variable, example class a variable called x. Then in the example class memory, x variable memory created with 0, sample class memory, y variable memory created with value 0. Now the question, who will initialize the object with the given values? Constructor. Now the new keyword calling whom now? No parent constructor. Which class constructor? Sample class. Arey bhai, sample class constructor contain the logic to initialize which variable? Y variable. Then who will initialize x variable? Is my question understand? New keyword has called sample class constructor. Then control go into where? Sample class. Inside sample class, which variable initialization is there? X, Y variable initialization will be there. But where is X variable initialization? In an example class. That means this sample class constructor is responsible for calling what? Example class constructor. Tell me, as a child, it is my responsibility to find what are my parent properties, parent astina. If I am not caring about my parent properties, what are the lands, houses are available, if I am not taking them, inheriting them, then finally they will be occupied by some other person. So it is a subclass constructor responsibility calling what? A super class constructor to initialize super class variable in your object. If you don't call super class constructor, super class variables are not initialized. Finally, your object is fully initialized or partially initialized. Then how subclass constructor can call super class constructor? By using the keyword called what? Super following by parenthesis. How to call super class constructor? Super. Arey yaar, this refers to what? This class. Super refers to what? Super class. So there are two keywords are there, this and super. This keyword refers to current class, super keyword refers to super class. So finally tell me, as part of initializing, what are the activities of the constructor? Is the constructor responsible for only initializing? No. Constructor is first responsible for giving class information to new keyword for creating object. Then the new keyword first take the class name and go to the class declaration. Found extends from example, allocate memory to example. Found extends from object, allocate memory to object. Second step. Now the new keyword for initialization purpose, new keyword called constructor. Then constructor not only responsible for initializing its own members, it is also responsible for initializing super class also. For that, second step, what it is doing? Calling super class constructor. Calling super class constructor by using super call. Calling super class constructor by using super call. So what? How to pronounce this parenthesis? Call. Super call. Okay. Why subclass constructor calling super class constructor? For initializing super class members in the current object, subclass object. If super class constructor is not called, subclass object is not initialized fully. Super class members are left with what? Uninitialized. And then the third step, what you are expecting? Initializing its own members. So how many activities performed by the new keyword? 3. How many activities performing by the constructor? 3. But here it is performing one more activity. What is that? Loading. New keyword is performing another activity, loading a class. Tell me, if you want to create object, first of all, class has to be loaded. If already loaded, directly instantiated. That means the Creating object, calling constructor, return object is always performed. Loading class will perform only first time. So totally how many activities are there? 7 activities. You can see these all activities except the second activity in this chapter. Loading class you have seen, creating object with the default values you have seen, calling constructor you have seen, returning object reference you have seen. So for creating object, constructor giving class information to new keyword you have seen, and initializing its own members also you have seen. But only this one step you have not seen. When you can see this step, when you develop inheritance. In inheritance chapter, you are going to see super call. At this minute, we are not going to worry about it. So totally, how many points we completed? 14 points. So now, new keyword and constructor notes part is pending. Please write down. These are all the statements you have to remember. If you don't remember these points, then you will fail in the interview. How you remember, that is your wish. By heart and remember, or understand and remember, that's all your wish. Right? Anupriya, I'm not explaining anything new thing on the board. Whatever I have explained already in the system, just rough work I have done. Understand? Daily you are seeing board, that means you are not studying properly. I didn't write anything on the board. Okay, just I have written diagrams, what I have explained. This is the notes part, right? I didn't write notes on the board. Just I have written revision step 1, step 2, step 3. Daily practice, you can see board. Completed? Done, buddy? So I think these 4 points only, this second point, invoking super class constructor, is not practically we understood. Remaining all points we have learned. So these are the story about constructor, types of constructor related all points. Now I want you to understand one small program. Okay, write down this program. Take it, static constructor and copy constructor. Take it, static constructor and copy constructor. Static constructor and copy constructor. A constructor that is declared with the keyword static, a constructor that is declared with the keyword static is called static constructor. Is called static constructor. Write down this code. Done? Side here written compile time error. Tell me, can I apply static to the constructor in Java? No. Modifier static not allowed here. Write down the compile time error, modifier static not allowed here. Write down statement down. In Java, in Java, we cannot declare constructor as static. Constructor as static. comma, in C plus, in a C sharp.net, in C sharp.net, it is allowed. In a C sharp.net, it is allowed. In a C sharp.net, it is allowed. In Java, static constructor, job, in Java, static constructor job will be done by, static constructor job will be done by static block, will be done by static block, static block. Will be done by static block. Okay, next, copy construct. Copy constructor. Right. A constructor whose parameter type is current class. A constructor whose parameter type is current class. A constructor whose parameter type is current class. Comma, contains logic, contains logic for copying, argument object data, for copying argument object data into, for copying argument object data into current object, for copying argument object data into current object, for copying argument object data into current object. Is called copy construct. Is called copy construct. Okay, look at here diagram. Okay, diagram, small diagram, I'll explain you. I have already one object there. Already have one object. This is E1 object, reference is 1010, pointing, contains X variable and Y variable. 0, 0, replace with 10, 20, reference is 1010. I did lot of changes in this object. Finally, 10, 20 replaced with a 15, 16. Now, I want to create a new object. With the same XY variables only, with the default value 0, 0. Okay, I want a second object with exactly first object data. I want a second object with the first object data. Tell me, I have already water bottle. I have one water bottle. Inside this water bottle, already water is there. I went to different places to collect this water. Now I have another bottle. I want to fill this bottle. I want to fill this bottle with the same water. And then tell me what you do. Again, you will take this bottle to different places to fill or copy from there to here. I have two options. Option number one, you do all the hard work and then fill the bottle, or just copy the water from previous bottle into this bottle. So already you know how to store data inside the new bottle. Nothing but how to fill the water in this bottle. Already you learn. Now what we are trying to learn, second option is what? Copy. I want to copy the data available in this bottle into another bottle. This bottle is called what? Object 1. This bottle is called what? Object 2. I am copying the data via constructor. Via constructor. So what operation this constructor is doing? Copy operation. That's why this constructor is called what? Copy constructor. Okay. Suppose there is no copy constructor, suppose. Then how can I write the code? Tell me. I want to copy data of first object into second object. What the second object? E2. E2. E2 dot x equal to, you want to copy data into x variable of E2 from where? E1. What do you write? E1 dot x. Next, E2 dot y equal to E1 dot y. These two lines we will write inside which method? Main method. If you write this logic inside main method, this logic I have to repeat for every new object or not? E3 dot, E3 dot, E3 dot, E3 dot. Correct? E3 dot, E4 dot, E5 dot, E5 dot, E6 dot. This is a reusable code or redundant code. How can I make it reusable? Two options. Either via setter method or via getter method. Either via setter method or via constructor. I want to store. For storing purpose, I have to use a setter or constructor. For retrieving, I have to use getter. Now I don't want to use setter method. I want to write this logic in the constructor. So tell me, I am defining constructor with how many parameters? If I write two parameters, int x comma int y, what I should pass? I should pass example E1 object or I should pass xy values. Come on. What the parameters taken? Int x, int y. If I take int x, int y, what I should pass? 15 and 16. Get out. I don't want 15, 16 individual values to pass. What I want to copy? I want to copy the data available in the object. If we want to pass object, I have to pass the object directly. Then which parameter will take object? Reference type. What I should write here? Example E. Example E. Which class object you want to take? E1. E1 is of what type? Example. So I have to take parameter example. Then what is the reference you are passing? 1010. Now 1010 stored inside E. Now tell me now, if you want to read E1 object data inside the example class constructor, I should use E1.x or E.x. E.x, E.y, because now the parameter is pointing the same object pointing by E1. In the main method, I want to write E1.x. Inside the constructor, I have to write what? Parameter.x. Now, by reading this parameter value, you want to copy into new object, You want to copy into this new object. Tell me this new object reference is passed into the program as what? Current object, where it will be available in this keyword. Inside this keyword, what is stored? 2020. This is pointing to this object. E is pointing to second object. What logic I want to write? Copy the object data into here. So what logic I have to write? This dot x equal to and this dot y equal to. What the meaning of this dot x equal to E dot x? Copy argument object x value into current object. Copy argument object y value into current object. Now this logic is working particular to any one object or any passed object. So now how to call this constructor? First I have to create an object E1 equal to new example of by passing 15 comma 16. Then I have to create example E2 equal to new example. I want to create second object by copying the data available in first object. So what I should write here? E1. Example E2 equal to new example of E1 I should write. Catch my point? So how to pass object? That is what you have to understand. Already you know. If you want to pass object as an argument, like how you create in the method parameter, in the constructor also you have to create parameter with a current class type. Then how to pass object as an argument? Write that reference variable even as an argument. Then how many objects are going into constructor? Two objects. Number one, current object 2020. Number two, argument object 1010. So both 1010 and 2020 coming here inside this our current object stored, inside parameter argument object stored, reading data from argument object, copying into current object. 0 replace with what value? 1516. So if interviewer ask a question, what is a copy constructor? What is the purpose of copy constructor? A constructor whose parameter type is a current class type contains the logic for copying the data from one object to newly creating object, copying the data from one object to newly creating object. Then we call it as what? Copy constructor. Copy constructor job is initializing the new object with existing object values. Understand? Right. Written a notes, copy constructor. Okay, down. Copy, the purpose of copy constructor is, the purpose of copy constructor is initializing newly creating object newly creating object, initializing newly creating object with the values available in argument object. Completed? Write down this code. Identify which constructor is no param constructor, which constructor is parameter constructor, which constructor is copy constructor. Place it in box. And what is this constructor? Initializing object with fixed value 1020. Right now. Place in box and side you write. Initializing current object. Initializing current object with fixed values. Initializing current object with fixed values. Next, place in this constructor box. This is a what constructor? Copy constructor, parameterized. Right. Parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. What the use of it? Use it for initializing current object with given values. Next, it is a parameterized constructor. Is it parameterized constructor? Yes, but it has a parameter same as current class. So it can be called as a parameterized constructor, but for differentiating from previous constructor to this constructor, we calling it as what? Right, copy constructor. Copy constructor in bracket. Of course, it is parameterized constructor. Of course, it is parameterized constructor. It is used for initializing the current object with past argument object values. Okay, then display method. Display method. Completed on. Now close example class. Write down test program to call those constructors. Are you able to understand each line or I should explain? If you need any line explanation, ask, I'll explain. Completed? So tell me down. Continuation, I have written 3 more lines. Copy these also. Completed? Now tell me what happened at this line number. What happened at this line number? Example E1 equal new example. New object is created. Okay, all people written program na? Right. Now I want to write quick diagram on screen. Screen not visible. Okay, look at this program. This is the program telling offline students. Now here, what is this first constructor? No param constructor. This is parameterized constructor. This is copy constructor. Just what I explained the board, write as a program. Then how to call no param constructor? Can I call directly? I mean, without passing any arguments, can I call? Yes. To call parameterized constructor, can I pass arguments? Yes. Then what happened? First object is created. First a new keyword creates object. Then new keyword call provides memory to x and y with the default values 0, 0. Reference is 10, 10. Then the new keyword call constructor. Which constructor? No param. By passing current object reference 10, 10 stored in this keyword 10, 10. Now tell me, this constructor receiving how many objects? One object. And pointing to 10, 10 object. And now what the logic here having? X equal to 10, y equal to 20. 0, 0 replace with 10 and 20. Okay. Now constructor execution over, control come back. Then next constructor, next what happened? Again E2. This is E1 variable pointing to it. And now E2 variable is created equals to new keyword calling constructor by new keyword creates object with reference 2020 x variable, y variable memory created with values 0, 0. Now the new keyword call constructor control is going to parameterized constructor with how many arguments? 3 arguments. First argument is this. First argument stored in this 2020 pointing to second object. Parameter x 5, 15. Parameter y 16. What the logic here? Copy a parameter x and y value to current object. Then 0, 0 replace with 15 and 16. Constructor execution completed. Control go back to the method. Inside method, new keyword returns the reference to E2, 2020 stored and point. Now I am writing E1 dot display, E2 dot display. What the meaning of it? Display E1 object values. What the values? 10, 15, 10, 20. Display E2 object values 15, 16. That means background control go to display method 2 times and logic is executed. Now what the meaning of this logic? Copy 45 and 55 into E2 object. Then 15, 16 replace with 45, 55. Now I want a new object with this E2 object values. Then E3 variable is created equals to new object is created with reference 30, 30 x variable, y variable with value 0, 0. Then the new keyword calling constructor by passing how many references? 2. New object reference 30, 30. Argument object reference 20, 20. Then control is coming to third constructor. Inside this constructor, this variable is created with the current object reference 30, 30. Parameter is created with reference 20, 20. Now this pointing to new object, E pointing to argument object. What the logic? Read value from E pointing object, copying into current object. Then from here, values are copied here. 0, 0 replace with 45 and 55. Then reference E3 30, 30 stored here pointing to it. Now my question, now this constructor what is doing? Storing or copying? Copy. Okay. Then after that, E2 dot display, what value? 45, 55. E3 dot display also 45, 55. But the reference is same or different? This constructor creates a new object and return. Reference is different. So double equal to operator returns false. Okay, now tell me, what happened here E4? Is it creates new object or copies the E2 reference in E4? What the E2 reference? 2020. E2 reference is 2020. Now it is pointing to old object. So tell me, E2 variable, E4 variable, both are pointing to same object. Now my question is, assignment and copy constructor are doing the same operation? No. Copy constructor creates a new object and copy the value. Assignment operator just point the value. So output is what? 45, 55, 45, 55. But here output is true or false? True, because both are pointing to same object. So this is the story about working with no param constructor, parameterized constructor, and copy constructor. So will you have copy constructor in every class? No. We'll have no param constructor, parameterized constructor, no param, what do you call copy constructor we will have very rarely, because copying data from one object to another object is very rare situation we will have. Okay. So work with the memory diagram like this by your own. Daily we are practicing with the memory diagram. It is not new to you. Today also your mind is looking at, oh, no, I'm not understand, not copying, I have to copy. If you get that kind of mind, that means you are not practicing proper. Okay. So practice it, understand it, and come tomorrow. Tomorrow we will discuss next chapter. With this, we completed constructor fully with integrations and everything. Okay. Thank you. That's all for today.